right, everybody. Good morning. Good to have you this morning. Glad that you could pop in on this, um, our time together. This is going to be kind of a special experience this morning. We are in a Zoom call, and right now, while I'm the only one on the Zoom call, I'm excited to invite guests this morning to join us. So we're going to spend some time in conversation, and I sort of want to set up why I think it's important for us to be in conversation this morning, and then sort of get us situated, and then invite uh, um, Jen Roth to join us from Project Peace. I don't know if you watched the episode from last week where we met in the morning and talked for a while. I was building on a lot of the content that was coming off of our podcast series and spending some time thinking about that podcast series and trying to both capture some of the ideas that were floating around the last three series that maybe you listened to as well, the episodes. And what I was trying to kind of wrap my head around and invite us all to wrap our head around was this idea of how do we move beyond religion as sort of a chosen ideology that, in a sense, takes on this sort of abstract construct for us? And how do we rather live into our religious experience, literally with our bodies, with all of our feelings, with our heart, our mind, our soul, our capacity to engage the world, and in some ways, out from that experience of almost like a physiological engagement with our religious experience, uh, comes the dynamism of the faithful journey. And it's not a matter of trying to, what's a good way to phrase this? It's not a matter of trying to master an ideology or even a commitment to an ideology by saying, I am this, almost like identity politics has become today. But rather, it is deeply conversational, it is deeply engaging, and it's almost tactile, the experience. And the reason why I wanted to kind of explore that last week was because, well, for two reasons. One, I think because we're all stuck in isolation these days, how important it is for all of us to remember that this religious experience that awaits us on the other side of the pandemic, or is maybe even possible for you to experience these days, um, can be this sort of relational, physical, interactive, open, um, an exchange of relationship and ideas and moments, a compassionate response and engagement with your faith experience. In addition to that, we are moving into Thanksgiving. This is Thanksgiving week. I'm excited for Thanksgiving, even though I'm going to be in conversations with my family via Zoom. You probably will be too. We'll be distanced from each other. We'll be sitting around a small table with a small bird, as I mentioned the other day. Um, so all that's going to be what's on the table for us, right? At the same time, we really want to reach out and uh, be compassionate to our neighbor. There is so much uh, suffering and struggle going on right now. Clearly, there are so many people struggling with the virus around the world. There's people losing their jobs. There is an increase in suicide. The situations around homelessness are more complicated. The food banks are exploding. We know this is a time of great need, and this capacity to be able to allow the experience of faith to move in us, but then also to be a gift to others is really central in a week like this and throughout the holidays. So I wanted to invite today Jen Roth to join us because she has been a part of Project Peace, which has been doing a lot of social justice work and community outreach in mostly in the through the tunnel in Alameda County. And she is now a part of launching more expanded footprint into Contra Costa County. So I'm going to bring her on today and just introduce her to you and just get in a conversation with her today and try to invite all of us to kind of rethink about how are we as people who foster spirituality kind of engaged in the world? And I know it might be a little bit wonkish to toss us into dual screen here. We'll just see how it works together. So let me admit her to the Zoom call, and we'll see where that takes us. Well, hello, Jen. How are you this morning?
I'm well. How are you, Dan?
Good. This is kind of tricky technology for me. I was just telling people that, trying to do a Zoom conversation and a live Facebook feed all through my earbuds in my living room is never an easy task.
These are new tasks, new challenges for all of us.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. New challenges for all of us. Well, I'm delighted that you're on the kind of this setting this morning. We have folks obviously on Facebook Live kind of watching us today, and then we post it up to YouTube as well for people who join later in the week. So, and I had just finished explaining to people why I was having you on, this idea of, our spiritual lives, obviously, particularly this time of year, tend to manifest themselves in some longing to reach out compassionately to others. And this is the season to be attentive to that. Of course, we want to do it all year long, but clearly the holidays have that kind of energy to it. So to bring you in to kind of talk about Project Peace and your role in Project Peace and sort of your experience of Project Peace is in a way kind of an invitation to all of us to think about how do we more deeply engage with our call to be neighbor to one another. And particularly as you extend that neighborhood now from Alameda County and into Contra Costa County, what might that look like for us? So
Wonderful.
we're glad to have you today. Do you want to say, well, I don't want to put you on the spot. So let me just start with some questions and kind of see where you take us this morning. Obviously, you're new to the staff at Project Peace, and we're just delighted to have you. And we're excited about what this might look like for Contra Costa County. But you were also involved in Project Peace for a long time prior to being, brought onto staff. So just maybe talk a little bit about, sort of what was the dynamism of Project Peace and the experiences that you were having for you and your family that kind of just engaged you with the work they were doing in our common life that we share. So you want to just talk a little bit about that for us today?
Yeah, I would love to. Thanks again for having me. Hello, everyone at Our Savior's Lutheran. I love talking about Project Peace because about 10 years ago, when my husband and I actually grew up in Point Richmond and Oakland. And then we, as an adult, my husband and I were in New York for about 8 years. And when we returned, our families are from Oakland. We wanted to move back to Oakland, but because of job circumstances, we moved to Lafayette, which we love, Lafayette. But we felt, we have 4 kids, and we felt like it was really challenging to live in this beautiful, wonderful, privileged Lafayette, and yet still have our kids recognize the amount of suffering that was going on near them, but not where they could actually see it face to face daily. So we started going to a church in Oakland about 10 years ago, and Project Peace had started serving there. And that's what drew us into Project Peace, was the fact that we could serve with our kids. At the time, our kids were really young. And it was just an incredible way to be able to have all 4 of our kids come alongside and serve us, and so that they could see faith in action, and that we weren't just talking about loving our neighbor, but we were actually able to do it. And even the little ones could, pull weeds for a school that was in need, or dig dirt and build things to help, the Crossroads High School have a cleaner environment for their little babies, for the teen moms. So it just was this, what drew us into Project Peace was this reality of like, wait, we can make a difference. Our little kids at the time, and now big kids, can make a difference even in the smallest ways. And it felt so encouraging and so hopeful that we don't have to just watch the sadness and watch the people grieving in poverty, but we can actually in little and sometimes even in big ways really make a difference. And that's just was exciting to be able to have, to be able to show them what it means to live in kind of a dual world of privilege, but having pain so close to us that we can still be near and understand what it looks like to live out Jesus's call for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you think now that they've grown, do you think that can you kind of look back and see how they've sort of integrated some of those experiences into their kind of life perspective as they've gotten a little bit more mature? Clearly, you've been allowing them to experience that from a young age, and that's probably been a part of their kind of quote unquote church life, but also their engagement with the world that you've offered them. How do you have a sense of how they've sort of, where do they land as they experience that?
Absolutely. I think one of the greatest things that we've seen now, our kids are like high school and middle school ages.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've seen is their ability to sort of not be afraid to talk about their faith, because they actually have, they've lived it out and they've seen us lived it out. And so it's become really easy for them to say to their churched and unchurched friends, hey, listen, we're going to go serve at, down in Concord at the Monument Corridor. Do you want to come with us? And it feels very natural and normal and not awkward because it's just become part of like who our identity as a family has become. And so then they don't feel insecure about it. They feel very confident, and to say to their unchurched friends, hey, this is a really great thing to go to the refuge food pantry. These people need help and we can do it, and let's all do it. Even the other thing that's been really great is even our youth leaders have make it like a youth event where we're like, hey, let's all go together, do this youth event together, and then go out to lunch after and hang out. And so it's like this ability to let's serve as a family or as a youth group, and then we'll also go socialize and talk about it and see how that affected us. And so I feel like it's just sort of been this like very normal, natural process now that they're older teens, to make this just a part of who they are, to make that, loving their neighbor and their community is just become not something you do once in a while, but just like a normal routine in our lives.
Yeah, that's sort of what I like about your description of it. I mean, it almost feels like a more fully integrated, almost like call and response, right? The sense of I'm in a religious community, and at the same time, I'm called to serve the neighbor, and that it's almost more fluid and conversational rather than one-off, right? Where, every year we do this, or it's more integrated into it. That's the one thing I've noticed in having conversations with you, is there's a more fluidity to that kind of conversation. And the other thing I like about Project Peace, and you made note of it, is this idea of being able to kind of process both in sometimes kind of pre-event and then post-event. What does it mean that people are struggling like this or live in a different way than I do? Or, those sorts of experiences then become integrated back into your faith conversations. And that's been it seems like a part of the way in which Project Peace has kind of partnered with congregational life to make sure that a conversation is dynamic through the speaker series and through days of service, all of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Well, now, so you're starting to move out into, you were kind of hired to move into Contra Costa County and try to expand the relationship and the model of partnering congregations with various sites who might have certain days of service that they might need, or projects or needs into the Contra Costa County. And so maybe talk a little bit about what your kind of hope is, or your expectation is, as you kind of expand that footprint.
Yeah, thanks. So one of the things that, we had served in Oakland for so many years through Project Peace, and then we realized that, of course, there's great need in Oakland and Berkeley, but that there's so much need in Concord, in Contra Costa County, in Martinez, in Pittsburgh, in Walnut Creek, and people forget about that. And so we've been able to connect with service providers that have been able to tell us what their needs are. Because the other thing with service providers, they get so many churches that mean well and want to support them and love on them. But for
Yeah.
them, the service providers get somewhat overwhelmed by that, the amount of people that they're communicating with. And so they like coming to Project Peace and saying, hey, this is what we need. Can you communicate with the churches for us? And that was just a helpful, tool to get wisdom from them of like, okay, what
Yeah.
do you need? What can we do to help churches, more easily connect with you and serve you in a way that's efficient and truly useful? And so that's sort of my goal as the new, lead for Contra Costa County, is just to more fully develop those relationships with the service providers, and then of course with the churches, the pastors, the lay leaders, finding out what do you guys need, what is most helpful with your church dynamics, your church population, the different ages of your church, and how we can support you and find the right places for you guys to serve. And as you guys know, with COVID, this has become a little different, a little more complicated.
It's partly why we invited you to do it this way, right? Because we would have you in front of the congregation, but this is your way of being in front of the congregation. So
Exactly.
I totally get it.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm in front of you in my, daughter's room. But the good news is that we are learning, as we all are, right? Learning the new way to live, learning how to pivot our days of service into our, for instance, right now we're doing a 2-week digital day of service where we spend 2 weeks emailing people who are on our e-newsletter, using social media, Facebook and Instagram, to promote not only like daily prayers for us all to engage in with that helps us focus on social justice, but also tangible ways to live out our faith. And some of them are in person, real safe, social distancing, mask wearing, in person ways to serve, like, handing food bags out to the homeless and to low income families. Actually, specifically in Contra Costa County at Refuge Food Pantry in Concord, that's one place that we've been working with. But there's been also some great opportunities for people to do at home, in-person serving with on their own with their families. There's been like tutoring. We've been able to provide a Zoom online tutoring for low-income students, which has been fantastic. As you know, there's so many students, they're not in school, or their school is very limited. A lot of them, English is a second language, and so trying to connect with a Wi-Fi and a teacher and all this stuff, and so the tutors help get them through that and keep their language skills up. So there's been also other opportunities of just even making masks at home or making food care packages at home, and then being able to safely deliver to the right facilities. So there's just been some great opportunities, even as we're pivoting to this new way of serving, that they're still able to do at home as well as in person for people, depending on what their abilities are at home. So we're really excited to be able to still connect and build those relationships in Contra Costa even now.
Yeah. Well, and I think so for those from our congregation who are paying attention, I think that the two things that I wanted you to hear, one was that, Project Peace, and Jen and I had this conversation before because I've been working with a lot of people in the agricultural world. Project Peace sort of serves as an aggregator of need, right? So they're this hub between the service providers who have needs and the sea of churches and congregations, and maybe even scouting troops or whoever who want to do some good in the community, but can overwhelm a service provider if they're getting a call from this church here and that church there. And I get emails periodically every time with, tell me who I could go out and help. I'm like, well, you need to go to the hub, right? If you go to this hub, it creates the, it's such a more efficient way of harnessing all the wonderful energy of individuals and congregations and organizations to partner with these service providers so that the needs are met in a more efficient way. And so that's number one. Number two, I did hear you talking about this, and I guess I'm just curious if if families over the holidays, let's say over Thanksgiving or Christmas, really want to do a little project, it sounds like there's still opportunities that are available through your website. Is that the best way for them? I'm trying to figure out how to get them connected so they can look around at the menu of ways in which they could be helpful to the neighbor. Can you just give us
Absolutely.
a little bit of hint for that? And then we'll make sure and put the link up. But
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you did ask about that specifically
yeah,
because even right now, this is perfect timing because of this 2-week digital days of service that we're doing. If you go on the projectpeaceeastbay.org website and click on days of service, they will specifically lead you to the link of all volunteer opportunities. You can either pick like volunteer at home, or you can pick volunteer in person, or just volunteer all. There's all these different links you can choose, and it gives you this fantastic, very clear look at places all over Alameda County and Contra Costa County that really do need the support right now. I mean, of course, they always need it, but especially now more than ever, people are experiencing with COVID. So it's a wonderful way to be able to pick, okay, I can handle this in-person safely, social distance masked thing. And for just an hour too. I mean, it doesn't have to even be for, like, some of them will give you a sign up link for a 3-hour time slot, but you can just go for one of the 3 hours. Again, with the tutoring through Faith Network, or Children Rising now it's called, Harbor House, again online, so you don't have to go in person, and they train you online how to tutor these kids, and Shepherd's Gate, and I mean I could give you a whole list. I'll let you guys look yourself, but it's
exactly right. Yeah,
wonderful way for your church to be able to just easily look up what ways they can serve, how they feel comfortable and what they can handle. And we also, if I know a lot of people, sometimes they prefer, instead of email, you can sign up for our email newsletter to get all this information that I'm talking about. But I know a lot of people like to just kind of go on their Instagram feed or their Facebook feed. And again, if you just follow us, Project Peace East Bay, it's, again, just a real simple way that you get these daily reminders of how you can support your community through what Project Peace has to offer. It's really great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So we'll put links to all that in both our Facebook feed for those who are watching, and then for those of you who log on through the OSLC website, we'll relaunch our banner page that also is a pass through to Project Peace. So try to make it easy for the holidays for you to get there. In addition to the local stuff that our congregation is promoting, obviously this is another venue. Right. I did just get an email from one of our high school students just yesterday who picked up on, I think, the mask shipment project that Project Peace had, and did that as part of his community service this week, and sent me a couple of shots of him packaging up all the masks. And so he had gone to your website, and I think teenagers are so much more savvy when it comes to tech. He's like, within 2 minutes, he's like, this is my project, I'm going to go do it. So
perfect.
It's just delightful to see people starting to engage with that.
That's
well, let
wonderful.
me ask you one kind of closing question, sort of a framing question. And I remember struggling with this a little bit initially with Project Peace, trying to wrap my head around it. And I think I've come to grips with it a little bit, but I'm just curious from your perspective how you kind of process this. And that is, of course, to do social justice or outreach, you don't have to be part of a faith community. You can participate in all of these projects, no matter your faith background, or even if you don't have any kind of traditional way of framing your faith, you're more spiritual and not religious, or whatever it happens to be. And yet, kind of one of the core values of Project Peace is this idea of, and I wrote it down, that to serve and sustain communities in light of what we call biblical justice. And there's this sense in Project Peace of really trying to ground what they're doing in what they term biblical justice. And I'm just curious, what, as you as a staff person, or who have been part of that, how do you bring language to what that means, if, as people try to kind of think through that for themselves? How do you do that personally, or maybe even you have a kind of a collective elevator speech that you give that helps people understand that. So how do
Yes.
you frame it? It's kind of a little bit of a theological question, but I always like that sort of stuff. So
Yes. Yes. Pastors like that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, we do. We get paid to do that wonkish work.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I love the question. I think that part of, growing up, well, I know you probably can't tell, but I am half Mexican. And my dad grew up sharing with me all the, racism that he experienced growing up, and just the social inequalities that he really experienced firsthand in Richmond. And him, teaching me and training me about what that looks like, and then how to then use our privilege to change that, and to change the people around us in a way that's loving and a way that's kind. And his modeling that to me has really affected, of course, my own parenting, but also just the way, probably why I got so excited about Project Peace initially, was just being able to find an avenue to really fight for justice by caring for those who are in need, and being able to then also dialogue with that. I'm sure many of you know about our speaker series events that allow us to be able to talk about, there was a recent one about a year ago about how do we talk about race with our kids? How do we make this a priority in our lives and not just something we do once in a while? And really that is the heart of Jesus. Jesus came to seek and save the lost of all of us, but particularly those who need the most help, and the most oppressed. And so that wanting to represent Jesus, wanting to follow Jesus in action, because we all know sometimes our words don't come out right, but our action can speak volumes to who Jesus really is and what he's called us to be. So I think that's sort of what kind of, lights my fire about Project Peace, is like, we can do this. We can actually show the world the love of Jesus by simply, making a mask like that high school student did, or whatever it is, again, big and little ways, to give hope. And I think that the hope part is what makes this so motivating to be a part of the Project Peace team, and building that partnership with the community here.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great way to explain it. I love that it links to your own family story. It's got family story. It's got kind of the sort of the inequities that your dad experienced, and then you manifested in as he shared that with you, and then your own religious story. There is sort of a kind of I think religion at its best, it seems like it functions when it's more holistic like that. When it's not just on Sunday we go to church, but it's sewn through a longer or more complex narrative of who you really are and who you're longing to be. And just listening to you talk, I could really feel that, the way it's kind of folded into the fabric of, your history, who you are, who you hope for your kids. That's just a beautiful articulation of it. So, well, thanks for your time today, Jen. I know you got your own thing going on Sunday morning. I can imagine. Stuck in Facebook Live on a Sunday morning is how awesome is that?
This is great.
Like I said, well, we'll link, of course, to Jen. My guess is you'll see more of her once we move out of purple and into other colors.
That's right.
We may have a moment when we're, of course, having Jen on site to kind of talk to us more about what Project Peace is doing. For those of you who are part of the church congregation, OSLC congregation, clearly we're, I think we're called a sustaining partner. We have a real commitment to Project Peace because we like the way in which they bring kind of the local capacity that's so both efficient and well-informed and communicative to the congregations and the individuals in the congregations. So you'll be hearing more about them in the months ahead as well. So I'll let you log off, Jen. I don't know how to shut you out of. If you know how to get out of this.
I'll probably have to ask my
Awesome.
teenagers how to do it, but
Yeah, get somebody in here to help us out, would you?
that's right. And one last word I will say is not only
Yeah,
thank you for letting me speak today, but to your congregation, I would absolutely love to meet with any of you via Zoom or socially distant to just get more of your feedback of how Project Peace has impacted you and what ways you think we can help more in your community. So please email me, and you can get my info on the projectpeaceeastbay.org website, but would love to
right.
connect with any of you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, that's a good shout out. So everybody feel free to touch base with Jen. She's obviously, that's why she's here. So thanks for sharing that last bit,
Yeah.
Jen. Okay.
Thank
Have
you
a beautiful
all.
day. All
Peace.
right. See you. Yeah. Well, as Jen tries to figure out, wow, that was efficient. And she's better at that than I thought she was going to be. Well, what a lovely conversation to have this week, I think. You know, I love this idea of making peace a project that we always work on. It reminds me in many ways of we just did a racial justice activation circle for 8 weeks in a small group. And that was another arena in which I realized that thinking about race and my own role in racial injustice is not just something about trying to identify where I land in the racial inequities of our world, but rather how do I move myself into being more of an activist, like Project Racism, right? I'm thinking about activities that I can engage in that connect my understanding of racial inequity and my behaviors. And Project Peace is just a great way to think about that. It's it's like action and reflection model, right? You go out and you do something, that thing actually gets in under your skin. It changes you, I think, at some almost physiological level. It moves inside of you in a way, and then you begin to reimagine your faith, giving expression in different ways. That kind of dynamism is just a beautiful way of thinking about the experience of faith. And this week, particularly as we kind of celebrate Thanksgiving and join around the Thanksgiving table, as we spend time with loved ones, we also want to make sure that we're giving our time to engage with the neighbor, and to neighbors particularly who are struggling not only this time of year, but year round as well. Just giving yourself a little bit of that wiggle room this week is a lovely way to think about how you live out this notion of biblical justice. Finally, as we think about that idea of biblical justice, I just want to put in my 2 cents. I do think that, as Jen made note, particularly in the life and teachings of Jesus, we see what is articulated in liberation theology as a preferential treatment for the poor. That there's this sense in the Jesus movement that when societies kind of build, if you will, a construct that creates too wide of divide in society, and that divide becomes a chasm, and that chasm becomes, if you will, polarized, that is a society who is headed down the wrong path. And the Jesus path was always to build bridges or stitch back or find ways to draw common life together again, draw us around common table, in common conversation, to not think about religion or politics or economics as a force that divides us, but a force that can bring us together as one family, as one household. And that really is the energy, I think, of the Jesus movement that we need to embody in our own time. Is it simply to watch the patterns in our own cultural context, and as we see those gaping chasms widen, realize that that's a call for us to think creatively about different ways to approach our shared life together, and to have a conversation about that, and to wrestle with that, and to wonder what got us on that trajectory anyway. And I would even expand that to the way in which we think about the natural world. What has brought us to this place? where our presence on the planet has been so destructive to the natural world in which we are, partnered with. It makes no sense. That clearly is another arena to explore, and we'll spend a little bit more time exploring that next month. So anyway, thanks to Jen for being a part of this conversation. Thanks to you for kind of joining in on it. And my hope for you this week is you not only get some good time around the small table and the small bird, but you also get some good time into thinking about how to be present for your neighbor. All right. So thanks for being a part of today. Just a couple of announcements before we move on. Number one, as many of you know, we are traditionally, as a congregation, we take on a week at the winter night shelter. That shelter is still going to go on, but obviously we can't be present physically to help coordinate that. And so our congregation is committed to fund one of those weeks. So rather than being physically present on site, we will fund that week, and it will be managed through the funds that we raise. The target's about $1,500, which isn't a very difficult target to hit, but that's the minimum target. I think if we can do better than that, that would be awesome. So in the Facebook feed, if you look, I put a link to our donate page on our website. That's a good place for you to make a one-time donation to Winter Nights. If you open up the project, the donate page, you'll see under Vanco a category for supporting Winter Nights. And Lori and I just made a donation. There's other people who've jumped on there and just made a one-time donation. But that's the place it makes it the easiest for you to support the cause. Of course, if you want to mail a check down to church and write Winter Nights in the memo line, that's another way of doing it as well. But we want to just spend this week in particular making sure that we've secured the funding for those who are transitioning out of homelessness in that program to be supported by our congregation. And of course, we've been a vibrant supporter of that program. And many of you have been down there feeding and cooking and sleeping overnight on that air mattress that doesn't hold air. Whatever you've done, this year we'll have to do it financially. So that's number one. And number two, we're also launching the Adopt a Family program. You should have gotten an email about that. If you want to participate in the Adopt a Family program for the Christmas holidays, just reach out to Skip at the church office. He can make sure that you get forwarded that information so you can look at what is available to do that year. I can keep going about opportunities we're going to give you to serve, but let me stop there because there'll be more in the weeks ahead. Finally, confirmation is on hold this Sunday due to Thanksgiving, so no confirmation this Sunday. And then the final two are Martin and the team has launched a Today service on our YouTube channel. So a beautiful way to kind of settle in for the night and just kind of calm down, especially as we wait through all that's coming our way in the next couple of months as we transition political power, as we deal with the holidays, as we deal with the pandemic. Lot of. It's nice to take a deep breath, and of course, kind of the calming energy of a service based on Today is a lovely way to do that. So you're invited to use that as a kind of a centering piece in the weeks ahead. And then, of course, be safe, be smart over the holidays here as we all try to navigate this spike in the pandemic. Clearly, we need to be disciplined yet again so that we can not overwhelm our healthcare system, help save literally lives by staying away from each other. It's the weirdest thing ever. So walk that balancing act as well. All right, all. Thanks for being a part of today, and we'll look forward to seeing those of you who show up at 11 a.m. for our drive-in service today down at Church in the Sunshine.